long before Rome became the center of a global empire. Before its legions marched across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, the Mediterranean world was ruled by another power. A city built by merchants, not soldiers. A civilization driven by trade, not conquest. A naval empire whose ships controlled the seas. That city was Carthage. And when Carthage and Rome collided, the ancient world was reshaped forever. The Punic Wars were not a single conflict, but a series of 3 massive wars fought over more than a century. These wars decided who would dominate the Mediterranean, who would control global trade, and which civilization would shape the future of Western history. One side relied on discipline, manpower, and relentless determination. The other relied on wealth, strategy, and brilliant generals. Only one could survive. To understand the Punic Wars, we must begin with Carthage. Carthage was founded around the 9th century BCE by Phoenician settlers from the city of Tyre in modern-day Lebanon. Unlike Rome, Carthage was never built as a land-based empire. It was a maritime power, a commercial giant whose strength came from ships, ports, and trade networks stretching from the eastern Mediterranean to the Atlantic Ocean. Carthaginian merchants traded gold, silver, tin, textiles, slaves, and exotic goods. Their colonies dotted the coastlines of North Africa, Spain, Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica. They controlled sea routes, monopolized trade, and grew immensely wealthy. Rome, by contrast, was still rising. In the early centuries BCE, Rome was a regional power in Italy. Its strength was not commerce, but war. Roman society was built around military service. Citizenship was tied to duty. Discipline, endurance, and loyalty formed the backbone of Roman identity. As Rome expanded across the Italian peninsula, conflict with Carthage became inevitable. The flashpoint was the island of Sicily. Sicily sat at the center of the Mediterranean. Whoever controlled it could dominate trade routes between east and west. For centuries, Greek cities, Carthaginian outposts, and local powers competed for control of the island. By the mid-3rd century BCE, Rome had unified most of Italy. Carthage already controlled western Sicily. When a local conflict in the Sicilian city of Messana drew both powers in, diplomacy collapsed and war began. This was the First Punic War. At the start, Rome had one massive disadvantage. Carthage ruled the sea. Rome had almost no navy, but Rome adapted. According to ancient sources, the Romans captured a Carthaginian warship and reverse-engineered it. They built hundreds of ships in record time. But ships alone were not enough. Roman soldiers were not trained sailors, so Rome turned naval warfare into land warfare. They invented the corvus, a massive boarding bridge with a metal spike. Roman ships would ram enemy vessels, drop the corvus, and turn sea battles into infantry combat where Roman discipline dominated. The war dragged on for over 20 years. Both sides suffered enormous losses. Fleets were destroyed by storms. Armies were wiped out. Sicily became a graveyard of soldiers and sailors. Eventually, Rome's persistence paid off. In 241 BCE, after a decisive naval defeat, Carthage surrendered. Sicily became Rome's first overseas province. Carthage was forced to pay massive war reparations. Rome had won, but Carthage was not finished. The defeat humiliated Carthage and destabilized its economy. To recover, Carthage expanded aggressively into Iberia, modern-day Spain. There, it built a new power base rich in silver and manpower. This expansion was led by one family above all others, the Barcids. Hamilcar Barca, a brilliant general, laid the foundation. His son, Hannibal Barca, would become Rome's greatest nightmare. From childhood, Hannibal was raised to hate Rome. Ancient historians claim that Hamilcar made Hannibal swear an oath never to befriend the Romans. Whether literal or symbolic, the hatred was real. When Rome interfered with Carthaginian interests in Spain, war became unavoidable. Thus began the Second Punic War, the most famous and dangerous conflict Rome ever faced. Hannibal knew he could not defeat Rome by fighting its armies in Italy on Roman terms. Rome had endless manpower. It could lose battles and still recover. So Hannibal did the unthinkable. He invaded Italy itself. In one of the most daring military campaigns in history, Hannibal marched his army from Spain, through southern France and across the Alps into Italy. He brought tens of thousands of soldiers, cavalry, and war elephants through freezing mountains, hostile tribes, and impossible terrain. Many died along the way, but enough survived. When Hannibal descended into Italy, Rome was stunned. The Roman army rushed to stop him. They were confident. They outnumbered him. They were wrong. At the Battle of Trebia, Hannibal used terrain, weather, and surprise to annihilate a Roman force. At Lake Trasimene, he ambushed another army, killing tens of thousands. Rome was panicking. Then came Cannae. In 216 BCE, near the village of Cannae, Rome assembled one of the largest armies it had ever fielded. Over 80,000 men marched to face Hannibal. Hannibal had fewer troops, but he had genius. He deliberately weakened his center and strengthened his flanks. As the Roman army pushed forward, Hannibal's center slowly retreated. The Romans advanced, packed tightly together. Then the trap closed. Carthaginian cavalry destroyed the Roman horsemen. Infantry on the flanks curved inward. The Roman army was surrounded on all sides. It was slaughter. Ancient sources claim that up to 50,000 Romans were killed in a single day. Senators, generals, veterans all dead. It was the worst defeat in Roman history. Rome stood on the edge of annihilation. Cities across Italy defected to Hannibal. Rome's allies abandoned it. Fear consumed the republic. But Rome did not surrender. Instead, it adapted. Rome avoided direct confrontation with Hannibal. It adopted a strategy of attrition known as the Fabian strategy. They shadowed Hannibal, cut off supplies, and refused decisive battle. At the same time, Rome attacked Carthage's power base elsewhere. In Spain, Roman armies slowly dismantled Carthaginian control. A young general named Publius Cornelius Scipio rose to prominence. He would later earn the name Scipio Africanus. While Hannibal remained trapped in Italy, unable to receive reinforcements, Rome struck at the heart of Carthage's empire. Scipio took the war to North Africa. This forced Carthage to recall Hannibal from Italy after more than 15 years of campaigning. In 202 BCE, Hannibal and Scipio faced each other at the Battle of Zama. It was the final confrontation. This time, Rome had learned Hannibal's tactics. Scipio neutralized the war elephants. Roman discipline held. Carthage was defeated. The Second Punic War was over. Carthage was stripped of its empire, its navy, and its independence. It became a client state of Rome, forbidden from waging war without Roman permission. Rome had survived its greatest test. But fear remained. Roman leaders never forgot how close they came to destruction. One senator, Cato the Elder, ended every speech with the same words: "Carthage must be destroyed." That obsession would lead to the final war. The Second Punic War did not begin in Italy. It began in Spain. After losing Sicily, Carthage rebuilt its power base in Iberia. The region was rich in silver, manpower, and strategic depth. Under the leadership of Hamilcar Barca, and later his son Hannibal, Carthage created a new empire in the west. This expansion alarmed Rome, which feared that Carthage was preparing for revenge. The spark came in 218 BCE. when Hannibal attacked the city of Saguntum, a Rhemann ally in Spain. Rome declared war almost immediately. What followed would become one of the most daring military campaigns in human history. Instead of fighting Rome by sea, where Carthage had already learned its lesson, Hannibal chose the unthinkable. He would march his army over land, across hostile territory, through Gaul, and over the frozen peaks of the Alps, directly into the heart of Italy. No army of that size had ever attempted such a feat. Hannibal's force included tens of thousands of infantry, cavalry, and war elephants. The journey was brutal. Mountain passes claimed lives daily. Snow, avalanches, hostile tribes, and starvation decimated the army. By the time Hannibal descended into Italy, he had lost nearly half his men. But those who survived were hardened, disciplined, and loyal beyond measure. Rome did not believe the reports at first. An enemy army crossing the Alps seemed impossible. When Hannibal appeared in northern Italy, Roman confidence turned into panic. The early battles were disasters for Rome. At the Battle of the Trebia River, Hannibal used terrain, ambush, and cavalry superiority to annihilate a Roman army. At Lake Trasimene, he executed one of the largest ambushes in military history, trapping Roman legions between hills and water and slaughtering them almost to the last man. Rome had never experienced defeat on this scale, but the worst was yet to come. In 216 BCE, near the small village of Cannae, Hannibal faced one of the largest armies Rome had ever assembled. Nearly 80,000 Roman soldiers stood against him. The Roman strategy was simple: crush Hannibal with overwhelming force. Hannibal anticipated this perfectly. He arranged his infantry in a deliberately weakened center, with strong cavalry on the flanks. As the Roman legions advanced, they pushed the Carthaginian center inward, believing they were winning. But this was exactly what Hannibal wanted. The Carthaginian flanks closed in. The cavalry destroyed the Roman horsemen and attacked from behind. The Roman army was encircled completely. What followed was a massacre. By the end of the day, over 50,000 Roman soldiers lay dead. Senators, officers, and entire legions were wiped out. It was one of the most decisive and devastating victories in military history. Rome had lost battles before, but Cannae threatened its very existence. Cities across Italy defected to Hannibal. Rome's allies questioned their loyalty. The Republic faced the real possibility of total collapse. Yet Rome did not surrender. Instead, it adapted. Under the leadership of Fabius Maximus, Rome abandoned direct confrontation. The new strategy avoided large battles and focused on harassment, cutting supply lines and exhausting Hannibal's army. This cautious approach was mocked at first, but it worked. Hannibal remained undefeated in Italy for over a decade, yet he could not deliver the final blow. Rome refused to negotiate. It raised new armies. It absorbed losses that would have destroyed any other state. While Hannibal was trapped in Italy, Rome changed the war. A young Roman commander named Scipio emerged. Later known as Scipio Africanus, he took the fight to Spain, systematically dismantling Carthaginian power there. Then, in a bold move, he carried the war directly to North Africa. Carthage panicked. Hannibal was recalled from Italy after 16 years. For the first time, he faced a Roman commander who understood his tactics and could counter them. In 202 BCE, the two generals met at the Battle of Zama. This time, Rome held the advantage. Scipio neutralized Hannibal's elephants, matched his cavalry, and maintained discipline under pressure. Hannibal fought with the same brilliance as always, but the balance of power had shifted. Carthage was defeated. The Second Punic War ended with Rome victorious and Carthage humiliated. The terms were harsh. Carthage lost its empire, its fleet, and its independence in foreign policy. Rome was now the undisputed power of the Western Mediterranean. But the story did not end there. Carthage survived, weakened but alive. And that survival planted the seeds of its final destruction. In the decades that followed, Carthage slowly recovered economically. Its trade revived. Its fields flourished. Though militarily powerless, it once again became prosperous. Rome watched with suspicion. Roman politicians, especially Cato the Elder, became obsessed with the idea that Carthage must be destroyed. At the end of every speech, regardless of topic, Cato repeated the same phrase: Carthage must be destroyed. The Third Punic War was not fought out of necessity. It was fought out of fear. In 149 BCE, Rome found an excuse and declared war. This time, there would be no mercy. Carthage resisted desperately. Its citizens melted down metal for weapons. Women cut their hair to make ropes for siege engines. The city fought house by house, street by street. For 3 years, Rome besieged Carthage. In 146 BCE, the city fell. Roman soldiers slaughtered the population, enslaved survivors, and burned Carthage to the ground. The city was systematically destroyed. Its territory became a Roman province. Carthage was erased from the map. The Punic Wars transformed Rome forever. They turned a regional power into an empire. They militarized Roman society, expanded slavery, and reshaped Mediterranean politics. But victory came at a cost. Rome learned how to conquer the world. It also learned how to justify total destruction. The legacy of the Punic Wars is not just Roman dominance. It is a warning about what happens when fear replaces restraint, and when power is used without limits.